We are drinking a little Toscana Rosso from Madonna Nera, otherwise known as the Super Tuscan. What can you tell us about Super Tuscans or IGT wine in general?
Yeah, IGT wines are super interesting simply because there's wines that the IGT was created because Super Tuscans hit the market and were suddenly wines that were falling outside of the parameters of either a DOC or a DOCG in Italy, but yet the quality was still there, and in many cases, actually superior to some of the local wines that fell into the DOC and DOCG. So originally, these wines that didn't follow the rules were just vino da tavola or table wines. But then when you've got a couple $100 bottle of table wine, the Italian government realized maybe they needed to create a different category so that they could be somehow um, regulated, but also defined by regulation. And so IGT, or Indicazione Geografica Tipica, entered the lexicon really to help clarify what could exist outside of a DOC or DOCG that wasn't just a regular table wine. And so these wines just don't follow the rules for a lot of Tuscan wines. IGTs now exist all over Italy. In this particular case, a lot of the wines in Tuscany were introducing international varieties. So they were some percentage Sangiovese frequently, but then also Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, fill in the blank. Sometimes they were actually 100% Sangiovese, which wasn't allowed in a specific region within Tuscany, and so that wasn't permitted under the DOCG. So they had to create the new category for that. Other times it would be 100% Merlot, and so wildly outside of what was traditional in the area. The wine that we're tasting right now, Madonna Nera's IGT Toscana, is sort of a classic example of that, being 60% Sangiovese, 30% Merlot, and then 10% Cabernet Sauvignon. And I think this wine actually demonstrates exactly what I would expect from an IGT wine, in the sense that it has a very distinctly Italian nose, right? The Sangiovese really drives a lot of the character of the wine, structurally as well as kind of on the nose and on the palate. Certainly is the character of Merlot and of Cabernet existing in the wine in sort of different ways, and adding depth and some complexity that work really well and align with the Sangiovese in a really beautiful way. For me, Sangiovese is so red fruited, generally speaking. And here you've got, especially on the nose, there's that sort of dark brambly fruit coming through a little bit that I wouldn't necessarily expect right away from Sangiovese. Although this region where Madonna Nera is, in Brunello or Montalcino, is definitely leans into a darker fruited side of Sangiovese. But here I think we also see like some of that kind of beautiful menthol.
I would say like dried herbs. It's kind of the driver's seat often find from Sangio from that area.
And structurally, I think you get a little bit of that sort of grittier, coarser tannin that you'd find in Cabernet and Merlot, and less of, well, it's not as driven by those sort of silkier Sangiovese tannins. The acidity is still bright and beautiful the way it should be from basically anything in Italy, but certainly in Tuscany. But it's just a really nice balance of the fruit, the savory character, the structure. I think this is all in used large barrels, which is also really classic for that area. It contributes, I think, a little bit of that element, giving the wine some breadth, but without any real oak character to speak of.
When people refer to Super Tuscan styles of wine, do you feel like there are any like misconceptions or someone says, "Oh, my favorite is a Super Tuscan," and for me, when I hear that, they have to have a specific one in mind because it's by nature the
Yeah.
most varied style of wine that can be produced. So what do you feel like when someone says, "Oh, I love Super Tuscans"? How does that make you, how does that make you start thinking?
Usually my follow-up question is exactly that. So do you have a favorite Super Tuscan, or what exactly does that mean to you? Because as I said, it really just means that it falls outside of the regulations of an area. The spectrum's massive.
And then for something I feel like I come across with is, especially this wine in particular, seems to be a really good gateway wine for people
Hmm.
getting into Italian wine, where you're right, it is unmistakably that Italian nose. You have that Sangiovese kind of popping out because it's predominantly that, but it does offer a little bit of familiarity and properties in the blend from the Cab and the Merlot that would make somebody feel like a little more comfortable with what they've had before. So I feel like this is a good good wine. If
Hmm.
you've never had Italian wine before, this is a good stepping stone.
Now the fruit's beautiful on it. It's not overly structured, which I think is one of the I'm going to say barriers to entry, but like one of the challenges for those who are coming to Italian wines for the first time is that the wines are built to go with food. They're intended to be consumed with all the delicious things you'd expect in Tuscany. A nice ragu or something like that, and those things balance the often intense acidity and tannin that are present in Italian wines. This IGT is a great example of a wine that softens that a little bit and is a little bit more accessible with respect to the structural elements.
Well, cheers. Thank you very much.
Cheers.